To get more into the NFL, Eagles' final preseason game is, of course, tonight. And then Tuesday is the first round of cuts for the 53-man roster. So to get more into all of that and more, joining us right now, as does every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, is Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports. Joins us live on YouTube and Twitter. To get into more all of that. Jeff, how you doing today?
You know what, Josh? I'm doing pretty good because it's the Eagles' last preseason game, and I get to see my alma mater play football tonight. High school football is back. I can't be more excited.
Well, we actually got a 3-day slew of games going on in Ocean City, which is about 15 minutes from the studio. Obviously, been interrupted by some of the rain and stuff going on, but I've been told the plan is they're just going to pause the games and then restart them up when the rain goes away. So, but by the way, for those who don't know, in other parts of the country, last week and this week is when high school football starts. It's only in the Northeast that we're like, oh, it has to be around Labor Day weekend. Like, I never understood that. Like, why does the Northeast think they're so much different than the rest of the country?
My dad actually said to me today, because back when he played, which was the 70s, they started in like mid-September-ish, and he tells me all the time, it's too early, it's too early. They end the season too early, they start the season too early. I'm like, well, Dad, they got district playoffs now. He goes, who cares about district playoffs? Back then, that was a different time. It was they only cared about playing on Thanksgiving and winning. The district playoffs was a foreign commodity.
That is true. The traditional history of the Thanksgiving Day game is a big deal in this part of the country, whereas other parts of the country, they care about winning championships.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. Like, when we went to district playoffs, when I went to Daniel Boone, we were the first team to ever go to the district playoffs. Because Daniel Boone does not have a rich football history until my class showed up. And everybody's like, district playoffs? What's that? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. You guys win like 2-3 games every year, you know. Now we win 8 or 9. So, and then they couldn't understand, like, when we lost, it was over. I'm like, yeah, that's how it works. It's, you know, you're playing. Oh, why do we got to play a good team in the playoffs? I'm like, because we won 9 games and they won 9 games. That's usually how it works. Only the good teams make the play. Now they watered it down. Now everybody makes it.
Well, Jeff, let's get to the pro football game right now. And listen, we're not going to get into the game tonight as much because let's be realistic. Nobody's playing tonight. And Jason Kelsey's running around in the rain on the field.
Yeah, he's still like, oh, what's he doing? Slides on like the grass or whatever he's doing. The turf. I don't even know what he was doing.
He's out there having a good time. So let's just put it that way. So if that's how Jason Kelsey feels about the game tonight, we're just going to move on to what's really important, which is, Jeff, the first round of 53 cuts is this Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And I want to know from you about a couple specific players and situations because we all have an idea who the starters are. We know who's going to be on this team for the most part, right? But there's a couple of guys that we're not really sure about. And I want to start with the final wide receiver spot. This Fulgham versus J-Jaw situation is fascinating to me because I feel like an argument can be made for both guys. They both could play special teams, which they have shown in the preseason, right? They both are big athletes, which we know they are, but they both have these incredible demerits against them that it's hard to wrap your head around how these guys can be this talented and still be this, shall I say, unpredictable.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting debate for sure. And look, I've said on record, I am tired of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. If he makes this team, so be it. I mean, honestly, you're just picking which trash at this point you want to keep. It's, you know, Travis Fulgham, I'm more than willing to give another shot, even though he really doesn't deserve it, because at least I've seen some degree of success from this guy. This guy does have talent. It's almost like back when the Eagles had Chris T. Jones and they hung on to him for a little longer than they should, because you saw the success from him. It's the same with Travis Fulgham. I think Travis Fulgham has the potential to break out in the game. I don't think J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is ever going to have that. I just think you got to cut your losses a little bit, and I think Howie Roseman is willing to do that. But it's going to come down to who plays better on special teams. That's one thing I am watching for tonight, Josh, so I'm glad you pointed that out. And, look, I think Greg Ward makes this team. I'm not sure about Fulgham or J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. They're probably the same player at this point based on how they played in camp, but I'm going on the guy who's had some success, so I'll go Fulgham. And I'll be honest, Josh, I think they only keep 5 wide receivers. I think they try to get somebody else.
Now, you mentioned get somebody else. How does that potentially get somebody else impacted by what happens with Zach Ertz?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting too. Now, for the record, I think they should keep Zach Ertz. I think they should still add a veteran receiver for depth. Sorry, my apologies there. For depth.
Jeff Kerr over there is still with us.
Yeah, I'm still alive, everybody. So,
that's good.
Yeah. So basically, they need depth at a lot of positions. This isn't just wide receiver. Wide receiver is one, but outside of tight end, and running back and defensive line, they need depth at a lot of positions here. And so I'm looking at it as, okay, you keep Zach Ertz around. I don't know if there's going to be any veterans right now that's available at wide receiver. After the cut down, we'll see what happens, because obviously guys have contract disputes and things like that happen. And guys you don't expect to get cut. But they could go to trade route, and that's where I think the Zach Ertz stuff comes in. I don't think you trade Zach Ertz for a wide receiver. I think you trade, and they won't trade draft picks. I think you got to do a player-for-player swap somewhere. Someone who deserves to play but just can't on this team. The thing is, who do you give up? Because they do have a lot of good young linebackers, but I don't think I'd part with one of them. Defensive line, maybe Derek Barnett becomes available, but again, I kind of like the Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Ryan Kerrigan thing. I don't think you should mess with that. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. It's a shame Kerryon Johnson actually got hurt because I think you could have used him in trade bait, quite honestly, Josh. But overall, it's going to be tough. I think they got to hope for someone to get cut on the 53-man cut down day on Tuesday.
Let's go to another guy that's been in trade rumors. What about Andre Dillard? Does he get traded, or should they keep him on the 53?
I don't know who would want him at this point. Like, I get you can get a draft pick for him, maybe a 6th or 7th round pick, but overall, wouldn't you just be better off hanging on to him? And, in case Jordan Mailata gets hurt, then maybe he can develop. So that's one thing how can I put it in words? I'm not against them getting rid of him. I'll say that. But I think overall you should keep him. And Brett Toth deserves to make this team. That's a guy I feel like should make the team. Can he play right tackle? I think they should try to find that out tonight because he's done a heck of a job at left tackle so far in this preseason. It doesn't look like it because the offense has been terrible, but if you watch the game film, Brett Toth has definitely done a really good job for them. So I think Toth should probably make the roster. It's just, will it be at the expense of Andre Dillard? I don't think the Eagles are ready to get rid of a first-round pick yet, unless they can get a high day 3 pick for him at this point.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, at Jeff Kerr CBS on Twitter. Jeff, let's move over to the defense now. I'm very curious to find out what this team does in the secondary, because Rodney McLeod probably is not starting this year, right? And Kevon Wallace is injured too, by the way. We don't know what the heck his status is going to be for the season. So you may have to keep some safeties on this team, or at least close by, in order to at least get you through a week or two. And those names include guys like Marcus Epps, who's actually played all right overall. And you have guys out there like Elijah Riley. You have Adams, the guy from Tampa they brought in. What is your perspective on the safety situation?
I was going to say, thank God they have Marcus Epps, because Marcus Epps isn't a bad football player. He's one of those guys. He can get you through a week. So it's good that – and look, Josh, I think he was going to make this roster regardless, but it's nice to have him. He may have to start week 1. That's just the reality of the situation. And you just got to hope Rodney McLeod is back by week 2 or week 3. He doesn't miss a lot of time. What I'm concerned about is, you're right, outside that, Andrew Adams, obviously depth. He's a good special teamer. So we'll probably make the roster. But you might have to look at the waiver wire, too. Maybe you have to get a veteran in there. I know the Texans had one of their safeties available. I gotta go through all my NFL news here, but I know the Texans are going to have a couple players. But I think it was Lonnie Johnson. That would be a nice little pickup for them. Someone who can get them through and give Rodney McLeod some time. But again, I think you're going to have to look at the waiver wire for this and over the next couple of days, because you definitely can get guys that can fill in, especially in this scheme. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens. But you're right. Like, depth at safety is an issue. And I didn't think it was going to be at first. But we were all back on Rodney McLeod coming back week 1. And that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
when do we expect? Do we even have any information about Rodney McLeod's progress? I feel like that's been one of the few things we actually have no idea about.
I honestly think we're going to find out more about the San Francisco 49ers plans with Trey Lance before we find out anything on Rodney McLeod. That's how secretive the Eagles have been at this point. And yeah, it's really weird. Like Rodney McLeod says he'll be ready by week 1. That's great. Players tell me stuff all the time. Kyler Murray told me last year his knee wasn't bothering him, and everybody else told me it was. So, take that with a grain of salt. So I don't know, Josh. It's going to be interesting. And again, it's like on the injury report because he's on the PUP list right now. As far as I know, I don't think they moved him off it. Maybe one of our viewers can correct me on that. But right now, it's pretty much I think you just got to get him off that list and on the 53, and then we'll see what happens. Personally, I think he's week to week at this point. But again, this is the beauty of having only 3 preseason games. The regular season doesn't start now for 16 more days, so they got time here.
Oh, they definitely have time, but they got to figure some things out before Tuesday. And that's
the issue.
Well, and that's what I was just going to say, and that is, with everything we just said, we know there's a reason why they've been people are trying to call it now the fluid 53, because whatever 53 is on Tuesday at 4 p.m. probably won't be the same 53 that shows up before the actual game 1 of the season. So what are some of the things that you want to remind the listeners to keep an eye on starting after the game on Friday through Tuesday and Wednesday next week?
Well, definitely look out for who the Eagles get on their practice squad, because they're going to be guys I have a feeling they're going to be bumping up and down. And again, you can have expanded practice squads again this year. So, look for guys that play well tonight if you're really interested in watching the game. Like Elijah Riley would be one. Stoll, the tight end, he'd be another one I would be interested in. I think he finds a way on the practice squad somehow, some way. And, I'm personally rooting for Kerr because I covered him when he played at Downingtown. And, he has a shot to, potentially make the Eagles practice squad. Not that he's going to make the 53 or anything, but that's some. And I'll tell you what, if you really want to watch them this week, watch the other quarterbacks around, the NFL, because I don't think the 3 quarterbacks the Eagles have are going to be their 3 quarterbacks come week 1. I have a feeling that they could move on from Nick Mullins and try to get somebody better. And remember, they did this a couple of years ago. Who was it? It was Matt McGloin, and the Eagles got rid of him, and they were able to get Nate Sudfeld. So, again, something to look out for.
It's interesting you say that, because after the last preseason game, people were texting in saying, get rid of Nick Mullins. I hate this guy. And I was explaining, you guys got to remember, this guy had elbow surgery. So he's probably not even 100% at this point. So honestly, they probably could have gotten rid of him. The guy that I was thinking about maybe they could have brought in for at least a 1 gamer was Josh Rosen. Just to tell Josh Rosen, go out there, chuck it around, let's see what happens. Instead, Atlanta picks him up, and it looks like he's going to be the backup in Atlanta, which honestly might be the best scenario for his career at this point, because for a guy who had all this promise coming out of college, he got to a dumpster fire in Arizona. He got dumped by Arizona because of Kingsbury, right? And then he goes to Miami, where they were on the first of 4 offensive coordinators, because they have 2 co-coordinators this year. So to me, that's 4 coordinators in 3 years for Brian Flores. Then he gets shipped out. He goes to Tampa's practice squad, San Francisco. Now with Arthur Smith in Atlanta. You could argue that this is the thing that might save Rosen's career, is being in Atlanta.
And it was an offer he couldn't refuse. Literally, immediately once A.J. McCarron got hurt and was done for the year, they called him up, and he immediately signed. They knew who they wanted. And again, if Matt Ryan somehow gets hurt, Josh Rosen's the guy right now. And that'd be a real shame for the Falcons, throwing him into the fire like that, because I think they want to develop him. But you're right, Josh. That is an incredible opportunity for him, because I'm sure Josh Rosen was thinking, oh, man, what am I going to do now? Does anybody want me at this point? I've been on practice squad. And he would have probably ended up on their team's practice squad. But you begin to wonder, you're Josh Rosen, and then this golden opportunity comes, unfortunately, for A.J. McCarron, that he got hurt. But, and again, I don't blame you, Josh. I think I would have signed him just to say, hey, you know what? We're going to waste this preseason game anyway. Just work out. We'll throw the ball around. We'll sling it around, and, we'll get you some tape, and, we'll see if we keep you or not. If not, we'll leave you on our practice squad. Maybe we'll develop you, or maybe someone else will sign you. So you're right, Josh. It was just a perfect scenario for Josh Rosen. And again, I think the 49ers did him a real favor by cutting him in favor of Nate Sudfeld as early as they did.
Jameis Winston is the starter in New Orleans. They finally made the announcement. I'm talking about your journey for this guy. Remember the crab legs at Florida State, all the weird stuff with him, comes to the NFL, all the arm talent in the world. But his head wasn't there, goes to New Orleans, pays his dues. Now he's going to be the starter. And you could argue that if anyone's going to succeed Drew Brees, it might as well be Jameis, because you know what? Risk it and biscuit, right?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And this is an interesting thing about Jameis Winston. I was never for or against him. Like, he was always weird to me. Like, I always saw the amount of potential. But the turnovers just were like, they were so head-scratching, especially in today's NFL. Like 7 pick sixes in a year. That's an NFL record. First guy with 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, which is honestly incredible. He was able to throw that much. And I think the Saints had to make this move. I just think they knew they could not win with Taysom Hill. And Jameis Winston in that preseason game, he looked pretty good going to Cowboy there on 2 of those touchdowns. I mean, Jameis Winston, this whole offseason, from what I've been hearing, he's looked pretty good and looked like he's had command of the offense, had a full offseason with this team, has had full support. And honestly, as an Alvin Kamara fantasy owner, I'm ecstatic. So that's another. But I think if you make Jameis Winston, maybe not the no risk it, no biscuit guy. Like, I don't think he has to be the guy who throws the ball 40 times a game anymore, although sometimes he will have to do that. But I think if you can manage his throws a little bit and kind of eliminate the possibility of him beating himself, I think the Saints can be a decent football team with him. It's funny. I expected the Saints to drop off anyway, regardless of who their quarterback was. But I think Jameis Winston, if he can show that talent, that number 1 overall pick potential, remember, he's still really young. He has a chance to stick around here. And I think he knows this is his last opportunity to be a starter in this league.
Couple more before I let you go, Jeff. Any concerns in Indianapolis? Quentin Nelson has the foot injury. Now he's on the COVID list. Eric Fisher on the COVID list. Fisher also dealing with some injuries in camp. Any concerns about Indianapolis' offensive line?
I don't think Quentin Nelson's going to be ready for week 1. I just think the time on the COVID list and all the time he needs to get ramped back up. I mean, I'd be shocked if he played week 1, quite honestly, Josh. I mean, I think Carson Wentz has a better chance with that. And, it's funny. Like, I still think Carson Wentz is rushing it. I don't think he should be out there week 1 either. I think he should give it another week. Just give it a week, like a week or two. It's fine. Like, at the end of the day, it's about your long-term health, not about getting out there and trying to prove something to people that already believe in you. This is not Philadelphia here. So, yeah, again, I'm a little worried about that offensive line. Ryan Kelly was hurt too. They've been banged up. This is a banged-up football team, and it's only August. So if I was Frank Reich, I'd put all these guys in bubble wrap at this point.
Sony Michel traded to the Rams. Like it, dislike it, don't care.
I'm not a big Sony Michel fan. But I think the Rams needed him. I think it's a good move for the Rams. I actually kind of like how he fits in with the Rams. They needed someone to go in there with Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson. They really did. Henderson's a fine running back. He cannot be the number 1 guy that whole season. And they didn't have anyone to spell. Xavier Jones wasn't getting the job done. Josh Funk wasn't getting the job done. And they're still going to be on the team. But it's just going to be Robert Calais was another one. Again, in my opinion, Josh, they needed to get somebody. And I think they decided, you know what? We don't really care about draft picks anyway. We'll give them up for Sony Michel. I like the fit in there. I think he's going to be a nice complimentary back. He's going to be really good catching the football for them. I like the move for Sony Michel and the Rams. I don't want to say I don't care because, look, the Rams are going for it. It's just I don't like Sony Michel, the player, but I like the fit in Los Angeles, if that makes sense.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, at Jeff Kerr CBS on Twitter. He'll be back on Monday's edition of the Sports Bash. Talk more NFL. Jeff, have a great weekend and enjoy the sloppy preseason game tonight.
I'm taping the preseason game. I'm really curious, Josh, because I got to watch my alma mater play high school football. When I come back, I'm going to regret probably putting this game in. So we'll see.
Well, the thing about recording it is you can fast forward through the commercials.
That is true. That's one thing I like about YouTube and Game Pass. I don't have to worry about any of that. Like, when I watch all the Eagles games, I only have to watch the commercials. Although I do that because commercials in the 90s are so much different than they are now.
This is very true. All right, Jeff, have a good one.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Josh.